Most people pour their morning cereal without reading a single word on the box. You grab it because it's fast, because your kids like it, because the label says whole grain or heart healthy or made with real fruit, and because you've been buying it for years without anyone telling you to stop. Here's what the cereal companies are counting on. They spent decades and billions of dollars making sure you never ask what's actually inside that box. Because if you did, what you'd find sitting in the bowl you hand your child every single morning would change every grocery run you make for the rest of your life. Consumer Alert went through 12 of the most purchased breakfast cereals in America. We pulled independent laboratory testing, reviewed peer-reviewed research, traced every corporate ownership structure, and cross-referenced every ingredient against the National Toxicology Program's documented findings. What came back wasn't what the cartoon mascots on the front of these boxes were built to suggest. 12 cereals that independent science has flagged for ingredients linked to cancer, endocrine disruption, neurological damage, and long-term metabolic harm. 5 that made a genuinely different choice. We're counting down from concerning to the one that no informed parent, no oncologist, and no independent nutritionist would ever put back in their pantry once they understood what was inside it. And we're finishing with the 5 that actually held up when we looked behind the label. If there's a box in your kitchen right now, keep watching. The brand you think is the safe one is probably on this list. 12. Kellogg's Corn Flakes. This is the one that started the entire breakfast cereal industry. John Harvey Kellogg invented it in 1894. It's been in American kitchens for over a century. The simplicity of the name and the plainness of the box imply something straightforward. Corn, processed into flakes, nothing complicated. Turn the box over. Milled corn, sugar, malt flavoring, and then the ingredient that changes the entire picture, BHT, butylated hydroxytoluene, a synthetic antioxidant added to preserve freshness. The National Toxicology Program has listed BHT as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen. The European Union restricts its use in food significantly. Japan has banned it from food products entirely. The United States still allows it freely in your morning bowl. Open the box and take a handful before adding milk. Real corn processed simply into flakes would be dense, slightly coarse, with actual grain texture. What you're holding compresses between your fingers into almost nothing and dissolves before it reaches your throat. That behavior is not corn. That is ultra-processed starch engineered to hold its shape through a long warehouse and retail window, while BHT prevents the fat content from going rancid on the shelf. Kellogg's generated over $14 billion in revenue last year. Removing BHT from the formula is not a financial constraint, it is a cost calculation. And the cost they calculated didn't include what happens inside your body over 40 years of daily exposure. 11. Post Honey Bunches of Oats. The name is doing everything the marketing team needed it to do. Honey, bunches, oats. 3 words that together sound like a farmhouse kitchen. The packaging reinforces it. Warm colors, imagery of actual oats and honey, a font that implies something considered and wholesome. Independent laboratory testing found glyphosate residues in Honey Bunches of Oats at levels that placed it among the most contaminated cereals in the entire category. Glyphosate, the active chemical in Roundup, classified by the World Health Organization's International Agency for Research on Cancer as a probable human carcinogen. Bayer, which acquired Monsanto, has paid approximately $11 billion to settle nearly 100,000 lawsuits filed by people who developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma. They continue to deny causation while paying $11 billion in damages. Now look at the rest of the label. Sugar is the second ingredient. Then corn syrup. Then brown sugar. Then honey. 4 sweeteners stacked in a single product. That is not flavor complexity. That is compensation. When a cereal is built primarily on refined grain with minimal nutritional density, manufacturers pile in sweeteners to manufacture the taste that real food would have provided naturally. Post Holdings generates over $6 billion annually. Sourcing oats from farms that don't apply glyphosate as a pre-harvest desiccant is entirely within their financial reach. It compresses the margin, and margin is what gets protected. 10. General Mills Lucky Charms. Lucky Charms is the one parents allow because it's a treat, because the marshmallows make mornings easier, because every child in America has asked for the box with the leprechaun and it feels harmless to say yes occasionally. The problem is that the average American child eating Lucky Charms is not eating it occasionally. The Environmental Working Group tested Lucky Charms and found oat flour contaminated with glyphosate at levels that raised significant concern for daily consumption by children. Children are not small adults. Their cells divide faster. Their neurological systems are still developing. Their kidneys and livers are not yet operating at full detoxification capacity. The dose that regulators calculated as safe for a healthy adult in their 30s consuming one chemical from one food is not the same calculation that applies to a 6-year-old eating this cereal 5 mornings a week while also being exposed to glyphosate in their crackers, their pasta, and their juice. Then there's Red 40, the artificial dye that gives the marshmallow hearts and stars their color. Red 40 is derived from petroleum. Under European Union regulations, products containing Red 40 must carry a mandatory on-package warning label stating this product may adversely affect activity and attention in children. That same dye appears in Lucky Charms on American shelves with no equivalent warning, no label, no disclosure, just a leprechaun. General Mills had $11 billion in net sales last year. The decision to keep Red 40 in a product marketed primarily to children is not a formulation necessity. It is a cost decision dressed as a tradition. 9. Quaker Cap'n Crunch. Let's be honest about what this product is. Pure refined carbohydrate with enough sugar to classify as dessert, shaped into pieces engineered to cut the roof of your mouth, and branded with a cartoon naval officer who has been promising crunch since 1963. The crunch is real. Everything else on the front of this box is fiction. In 2023, the Environmental Working Group published updated testing on oat-based cereals. Quaker products, including cereals made from the same oat supply chain as Cap'n Crunch's corn-based formula, showed some of the highest glyphosate contamination levels in the entire breakfast cereal category. But glyphosate is not the only concern in this box. BHA, butylated hydroxyanisole, a companion preservative to BHT, also listed by the National Toxicology Program as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen. BHA has been shown in animal studies to cause papillomas and carcinomas of the forestomach. California's Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment lists BHA as a known carcinogen under Proposition 65. It is in this cereal. It is in the bowl you pour every morning while the cartoon captain smiles from the box. Quaker is owned by PepsiCo. $86 billion in annual revenue. BHA removal is not a financial constraint. It is a choice PepsiCo makes every single time they print the ingredient list. 8. Kellogg's Raisin Bran. This is the adult responsible choice. The cereal people graduate to when they decide they're eating healthier, high in fiber, made with whole grain, raisins for natural sweetness. The sun on the packaging looks almost medical in its reassurance. Here is what the reassuring packaging does not show you. The raisins in Kellogg's Raisin Bran are coated in sugar. The ingredient list confirms it. Raisins, sugar. The natural fruit has been processed and then re-sweetened because somewhere in Kellogg's formulation process, someone decided that actual dried grapes weren't sweet enough on their own. A single serving contains 18 grams of sugar. That's before the milk. That is more sugar than a glazed donut from Dunkin'. Then there is the BHT again. The same synthetic preservative flagged by the National Toxicology Program as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen that appears in Kellogg's Corn Flakes, sits in the Raisin Bran you chose because you were trying to be more careful. You graduated to the responsible adult cereal and found the same carcinogen-flagged preservative hiding behind the fiber claim. A class action lawsuit was filed in 2021 in New York alleging that Kellogg's misled consumers about the sugar content of Raisin Bran through misleading labeling. Kellogg's denied the allegations. The raisins remain sugar-coated. The BHT remains on the ingredient list. The sun on the box keeps shining. 7. General Mills Cheerios. This one is going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people. Cheerios is the first solid food for millions of American babies. Pediatricians recommend it. Parents keep it in their bag. It's the cereal that gets handed to toddlers in grocery carts because it's small, because it's whole grain oats, because it is culturally the safest possible cereal a parent can choose. The Environmental Working Group tested Cheerios for glyphosate in 2018 and found 1,125.3 parts per billion. More than 1,000 parts per billion of a probable human carcinogen in the cereal most commonly fed to children under 2 years old. They retested in subsequent years. The contamination persisted. General Mills disputed the methodology. They pointed to EPA tolerance levels. Here is what they did not address. The EPA tolerance levels for glyphosate were set for healthy adults. They were not set for infants. They were not set for toddlers. They were not set for anyone whose body weight is measured in pounds rather than in adult kilograms, whose neurological development is actively ongoing, and whose primary daily dietary exposure for several months of their life is this specific product. General Mills pledged in 2019 to investigate their oat supply chain. 5 years later, the oats in Original Cheerios are still not certified glyphosate-free by any independent third-party laboratory that tests the finished product rather than the incoming ingredients. The promise was made to your pediatrician's recommendation. The lab results were made to your child's bowl. 6. Kellogg's Frosted Flakes. They're great. The slogan has been in American households since 1952. Tony the Tiger is one of the most recognized brand mascots in advertising history. And for 70-plus years, Kellogg's has been pointing a cartoon tiger at children to sell a product that is 37% sugar by weight. Frosted Flakes contains BHT. The same flagged preservative present in Corn Flakes, present in Raisin Bran, present across the Kellogg's product lineup because BHT is cheaper than the alternative. It also contains artificial flavoring without specifying which artificial compounds are involved, because food law in the United States does not require manufacturers to disclose individual artificial flavor components. The phrase artificial flavor on an ingredient list is a legally permitted black box. In 2022, the Center for Science in the Public Interest issued updated warnings about children's breakfast cereals and their artificial dye content. Frosted Flakes contains yellow 6, an artificial dye linked in multiple peer-reviewed studies to hyperactivity in children and flagged in European regulatory reviews as requiring consumer warning labels. No such warning appears on the American box. Tony the Tiger's enthusiasm is uninterrupted. 5. Post Grape Nuts. This is the serious one. The no-nonsense cereal. No cartoon mascot. No artificial colors. A product that looks and tastes and feels like something a doctor might actually prescribe. Dense, plain, functional. People who eat grape nuts are not fooling themselves about breakfast. They made a deliberate nutritional choice. Independent testing conducted by the Environmental Working Group found glyphosate in grape nuts at 172.5 parts per billion. This matters more in grape nuts than in a frosted children's cereal for one specific reason. Grape nuts is marketed to health-conscious adults who are eating this product every single day, often in large portions, specifically because they believe it is the cleanest option on the shelf. The person eating grape nuts for heart health, eating it after a cancer diagnosis, eating it because their cardiologist suggested increasing whole grain fiber, is the exact person whose total daily glyphosate exposure from multiple food sources is already elevated and who is least likely to suspect that the cereal they chose for its health properties is adding to that load. Post Holdings has not published independent glyphosate testing results on grape nuts using finished product samples. The contamination data we have comes from independent researchers, not from the manufacturer. A brand built entirely on the premise of no-nonsense nutrition owes its customers no-nonsense testing transparency. The silence is the answer. 4. Kellogg's Special K. Special K was built specifically around women watching their weight. Red packaging, lean imagery, a decades-long marketing campaign that tied this cereal to a particular body ideal. It has occupied a specific psychological space in the cereal aisle for over 60 years. It's not just a cereal. It's a goal. The goal has a problem. Special K contains BHT. It contains artificial flavors without component disclosure. And a 2021 study published in JAMA Internal Medicine examining ultra-processed food consumption found that cereals in the same formulation category as Special K were positively associated with increased overall cancer risk, with statistically significant associations specifically for breast cancer. Special K is marketed to women. The research flagging ultra-processed cereals in this category for elevated breast cancer risk involves women. The marketing targets the audience the science concerns. That is not a coincidence that Kellogg's has ever addressed publicly. The red packaging has never once mentioned the peer-reviewed literature. The ingredient list still shows BHT and undisclosed artificial flavors, and the marketing still implies that eating this product is an act of self-care. 3. Quaker Oats Dinosaur Eggs Instant Oatmeal. We need to pause on this one because this is the product that parents reach for when they're trying to do better than sugary cereal. Dinosaur eggs. The eggs hatch into little dinosaur-shaped candy pieces when you add hot water. It's oatmeal. It feels like a compromise that still makes mornings fun. In 2024, Consumer Reports published updated testing on oat-based breakfast products, including instant oatmeal varieties marketed to children. Quaker oat products tested among the highest in glyphosate contamination in the entire hot cereal and instant oatmeal category. But that is not the specific concern that puts this product at number 3 on this list. The dinosaur eggs are sugar. The hatching pieces are artificial dye and sugar. A single packet of dinosaur eggs contains between 13 and 15 grams of added sugar. The American Heart Association recommends that children between 2 and 18 consume no more than 25 grams of added sugar per day across all sources. One packet of what is being sold as a warm, wholesome oatmeal breakfast delivers 60% of a child's entire recommended daily sugar maximum before the school bus arrives. In 2023, a class action lawsuit was filed in California federal court alleging that Quaker misrepresented the health properties and natural ingredient claims on several of its oat product lines. Quaker, owned by PepsiCo with $86 billion in annual revenue, denied the allegations. The dinosaur eggs are still hatching, the sugar count is still not the first thing the packaging shows you, and the glyphosate is still in the oats, too. General Mills Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Parents who won't buy Lucky Charms sometimes buy Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It feels more honest. There's no marshmallow, no artificial-looking colors, just cinnamon and sugar on whole-grain wheat. The warmth of the spice makes it feel like it belongs in the category of real food rather than candy. The Environmental Working Group found glyphosate in Cinnamon Toast Crunch. The artificial flavors are undisclosed, but the ingredient that moves this product to number 2 is something found not in a laboratory test but in the box in someone's kitchen in 2021. A consumer found what appeared to be shrimp tails inside their box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. They documented it. They contacted General Mills. General Mills initially suggested the material was an accumulation of cinnamon sugar that had crystallized. The consumer pushed back with photographs. The story went nationally viral. General Mills ultimately acknowledged the possibility of a foreign material issue and offered to replace the box. What that incident revealed was not just a quality control failure in one box. What it revealed was that the sealed packaging and the manufacturing oversight systems General Mills applies to the most popular children's cereal in America can produce a result that no parent would accept and that the company's first instinct was to explain away rather than immediately address. How many boxes had the same issue that no one documented carefully enough to generate a national news cycle? General Mills has not answered that question publicly. Cinnamon Toast Crunch is the third most purchased cereal in the United States. $11 billion in General Mills annual sales. One contamination incident that went viral. And a product still sitting in millions of children's breakfast bowls every single morning. 1. Kellogg's Froot Loops. This is the one. The one that no informed parent, no independent nutritionist, no oncologist advising a cancer patient on diet, and no food safety researcher reviewing the current science would put back in their pantry if they understood what was actually inside. Start with the dyes. Red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, blue 1, blue 2, all 5 of the most extensively studied and most concerning artificial food dyes used in the United States are present simultaneously in a single bowl of Froot Loops. Under European regulations, each of these dyes individually triggers a mandatory consumer warning about potential effects on children's activity and attention. All 5, stacked together in one product, with no warning label on the American box. The 2007 Southampton study, published in The Lancet, found a statistically significant link between artificial food dye consumption and increased hyperactivity in children. The British Food Standards Agency acted on that research and recommended manufacturers voluntarily remove these dyes. European manufacturers largely complied. Kellogg's reformulated Froot Loops for the European market without these dyes. The exact same brand, the exact same product name, sells in Europe with a different formula because European regulations require the warning label that makes the dyes commercially unviable. In America, no warning label is required. The original formula remains. The 5 dyes stay in the bowl. The loop shape and the cartoon bird have not changed. Now add the BHT. The synthetic preservative listed by the National Toxicology Program as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen, present again in this product as it is across the Kellogg's lineup. Add the artificial flavoring, components undisclosed. Add the 34% sugar content by weight, and understand that there is no actual fruit in Froot Loops. Not one identifiable fruit ingredient appears on the label. The name is a deliberate misspelling designed to create the impression of fruit content without making a legal claim that the company would have to substantiate. Kellogg's reformulated Froot Loops for Europe because the science forced them to. They did not reformulate it for America because American regulations did not require them to. The science didn't change at the border. The regulatory requirement did. And Kellogg's made the business decision that American children would continue receiving the version the European regulators found unacceptable. $14 billion in annual Kellogg's revenue. A reformulated product already proven to be manufacturable without these dyes. A deliberate choice to keep selling the original formula in America because no one has required them to stop. If there is one box in your kitchen right now that needs to go in the trash today, it is this one. Now that you know what to take off the shelf, here are the 5 that looked at the same raw material supply chains, the same preservative options, the same dye palette, and made a completely different set of decisions. 5. Nature's Path Organic Corn Flakes. Nature's Path has been family-owned and independently operated since 1985. No multinational acquisition, no Kellogg's or General Mills or PepsiCo corporate parent running a margin calculation that overrides the sourcing standard. Nature's Path Organic Corn Flakes carry USDA organic certification and the non-GMO Project Verified seal. No BHT, no BHA, no artificial colors, no undisclosed artificial flavors. The ingredient list is organic milled corn, sea salt, and that is essentially where it ends. Organic certification does not guarantee zero glyphosate in the finished product, but it does eliminate intentional pre-harvest application, which is the primary driver of the contamination levels found in the conventional brands on this list. The texture tells you immediately that something different was done here. It doesn't compress into nothing between your fingers. There is actual grain resistance. It goes slightly soft in milk rather than dissolving into flavored paste. That's what corn actually does when you process it without engineering it for a 6-month shelf window. Available at most natural grocery stores and increasingly in conventional supermarkets. Costs more than Great Value or Kellogg's. That difference in price represents the difference between a supply chain that tests its sourcing and one that bids out the contract to whoever will meet the minimum legal requirement. 4. Bob's Red Mill Organic Old-Fashioned Rolled Oats. This isn't a cereal company. This is a grain company that applies the same sourcing standards to its oats that it applies to every product in its line. Bob's Red Mill is employee-owned. The founder, Bob Moore, transferred ownership of the company to his employees rather than selling to a private equity firm or food conglomerate. That ownership structure matters because the people making sourcing decisions about these oats have their own financial futures attached to the quality of what ships. No BHT, no BHA, no artificial dyes, no undisclosed artificial flavors, no added sugar of any kind. USDA certified organic. The ingredient is oats. 1 item on the ingredient list, 1 item. Independent testing of Bob's Red Mill Organic Rolled Oats has found glyphosate levels consistently among the lowest in the oat-based product category. Not zero in every test run, but significantly lower than every oat-based product in the avoid section of this investigation, and with a company that publishes its testing approach rather than burying it in a sustainability report nobody reads. The preparation requires hot water and 3 to 5 minutes. That's the trade-off. You're exchanging 60 seconds at the microwave for a product that doesn't require a cartoon dinosaur to make it palatable, because real oats cooked properly with fruit or cinnamon taste like actual food rather than like an approximation of food engineered for a 7-year-old's approval. 3. Purely Elizabeth Ancient Grain Granola. This product makes the list for a specific reason. It is the bridge option. The one that works for a household where the kids have been eating Froot Loops and the idea of transitioning to Bob's Red Mill feels like a fight nobody has the energy for on a Tuesday morning. Purely Elizabeth is made with certified glyphosate residue-free oats. That certification tests the finished product, not the incoming ingredient. It verifies what ends up in the bag, not what was intended to go into it. No BHT, no BHA, no Red 40 or Yellow 5 or any other petroleum-derived dye. The sweetness comes from coconut sugar and maple syrup, both with lower glycemic responses than the corn syrup and refined white sugar stacked inside every product on the avoid list. The founder, Elizabeth Stein, built this company from a farmer's market booth in 2009. It has never been acquired by a multinational food corporation. The sourcing decisions are still made by people whose names are on the product, rather than by a procurement committee optimizing for next quarter's margin. Find it at Whole Foods, Target, and most major grocery chains. It costs more per ounce than Lucky Charms. It costs significantly less per decade than managing the health consequences of daily petroleum dye consumption starting in childhood. 2. 1 Degree Organic Foods Sprouted Oat O's. 1 Degree does something no brand on the avoid list does, and no brand at this price point is required to do. They publish the farm source for every single ingredient. Scan the QR code on the bag and trace the oats back to the specific farm where they were grown. Not the country, not the supplier, the farm. 1 Degree carries the BioCheck non-glyphosate certified seal. This certification verifies the result in the finished product, not the intention in the supply chain. It means an independent third-party laboratory tested what went into the bag and confirmed that glyphosate was undetectable at the laboratory's detection limit. That is the standard that every product on the avoid list should be held to. It is the standard none of them have chosen to meet. No artificial dyes, no BHT, no BHA, no undisclosed flavoring compounds. The ingredient list includes organic sprouted whole wheat, organic sprouted oat flour, organic cane sugar, and sea salt. Sprouting the grain before processing increases the bioavailability of nutrients and reduces the phytic acid that makes conventional whole grain products harder to digest. This is not marketing language, it is a measurable difference in how the food interacts with the human body. Available at natural grocery chains and online. The price reflects what independent farm traceability, certified glyphosate testing, and a supply chain you can actually trace back to a specific field actually costs. Every brand on the avoid list made the opposite choice. This is what the alternative looks like when a company doesn't. 1. Ezekiel 4:9 Sprouted Grain Cereal by Food for Life. There is no flour in this product. None. Food for Life sprouts 6 organic whole grains and legumes, wheat, barley, millet, lentils, soybeans, and spelt, then processes them without the high-temperature extrusion that creates acrylamide in conventional breakfast cereals. Acrylamide is a chemical formed when starchy foods are cooked at high heat. The FDA has formally acknowledged acrylamide as a potential human carcinogen. It forms in the manufacturing process of almost every product on the avoid list. Food for Life's controlled lower-temperature sprouting process does not produce it at comparable levels. Food for Life carries the BioCheck non-glyphosate certified seal. Glyphosate residues in the finished product are undetectable at the laboratory's detection limit. No BHT, no BHA, no Red 40. No Yellow 5, no Yellow 6, no petroleum-derived dye of any kind. No added sugar in the original variety. No artificial flavors with undisclosed components.